What happens when you mix tanks, fireworks, and just the right amount of global shade? You get China's latest Victory Day parade, a spectacle so loaded with symbolism it made the Oscars look like open mic night. Xi Jinping didn't just roll out soldiers and missiles, he rolled out a message. China is ready to challenge the world order. And if you think this was just about flexing military hardware, think again. This was political theater on a scale that could make Broadway jealous. From Vladimir Putin grinning like he'd found a new BFF, to Kim Jong-un waving like it was his birthday party, to India's Modi pulling the world's classiest ghost move, this parade was packed with drama, diplomacy, and just enough awkward silence to keep the analysts busy for months. So buckle up because we're about to unpack the 8 jaw-dropping truths behind Xi's Victory Day flex. If you tuned into China's Victory Day parade expecting a casual march of tanks, a few polite salutes, and maybe some fireworks, think again. Xi Jinping decided to open the show not with a drum roll, but with an ultimatum that could double as the trailer for a dystopian blockbuster. Standing under the heavy shadows of Tiananmen Square, with more missiles behind him than most countries have in their entire arsenal, Xi declared the world faces a choice. Peace or war, dialogue or confrontation, win-win or zero-sum. Translation? Pick your path, but don't expect Beijing to play nice if you bring a stick to this party. Now, Xi isn't exactly new to the art of grandstanding, but this time, his delivery wasn't just aimed at domestic cheerleaders or casual parade watchers sipping tea at home. No, this was a megaphone message designed for Washington, New Delhi, Tokyo, and anyone else with a habit of questioning Beijing's rise. It was as if Xi stood there holding a giant "Your Move" sign for the world. Think of it like a poker game where everyone else brought chips and Xi brought the entire casino. Peace or war wasn't just rhetoric, it was a warning label slapped on every hypersonic missile rolling by. And if you listened closely, there was a subtler undertone. China isn't afraid anymore. This wasn't the China of Deng Xiaoping, quietly biding its time. This was Xi's China, proudly flexing its muscles while essentially saying, if you want stability, cooperate. If you want chaos, we've got plenty of fireworks. It's worth noting that this opening salvo was timed with surgical precision. With Putin and Kim Jong-un seated as VIP guests, Xi had a built-in chorus of nodding heads to amplify the message, a triple act of defiance against Western dominance. And the crowd? Well, between the goose-stepping soldiers and gleaming hardware, they didn't need subtitles to get the point. It's worth noting that this opening salvo was timed with surgical precision. With Putin and Kim Jong-un seated as VIP guests, Xi had a built-in chorus of nodding heads to amplify the message, a triple act of defiance against Western dominance. And the crowd? Well, between the goose-stepping soldiers and gleaming hardware, they didn't need subtitles to get the point. Of course, words alone don't win battles or headlines, and Xi knows that, which is why right after dropping his peace or war mic moment, he rolled out something shinier, deadlier, and far more Instagram-worthy, an arsenal of futuristic weapons that could make Hollywood jealous. If Xi's opening line was the dramatic trailer, what came next was the full-blown IMAX premiere. Forget parades with marching bands, China basically turned Tiananmen Square into a live-action tech expo of destruction. Hypersonic missiles? Check. Underwater drones that look like they crawled out of a James Cameron movie? Check. Sea-to-air laser systems that could literally slice through enemy targets like a Star Wars lightsaber? Oh, you bet. The stars of the show were China's hypersonic weapons, which make conventional missiles look like old dial-up internet. These things fly at speeds so ridiculous that by the time an enemy radar says incoming, the missile is already knocking on the door. Western defense analysts were probably watching this parade like anxious parents watching their kid hang out with the wrong crowd, equal parts terrified and impressed. But wait, there's more. Enter the swarms of drones. And not just any drones. These were autonomous, AI-driven systems designed to overwhelm defenses by sheer numbers. Picture a flock of angry metallic geese, except each one carries enough firepower to ruin an aircraft carrier's day. It's the kind of hardware that screams, "Good luck shooting us all down." And then came the pièce de résistance, laser cannons. Yes, real ones, straight out of the sci-fi section. These systems were paraded around like China was saying, remember when lasers were just for cats? Well, now they're for cutting through enemy planes. If that doesn't make the Pentagon sweat, nothing will. Here's the kicker. This wasn't just about showing shiny toys. It was narrative warfare. Xi's team made sure these futuristic systems rolled past the cameras, reminding the world that China isn't just catching up, it's pushing ahead. Think of it like a fashion runway, except instead of Prada and Gucci, the models were hypersonics and AI drones strutting their lethal stuff. And if the lasers and drones weren't enough to make military planners choke on their coffee, the next segment definitely did, because Xi unveiled something even bigger, the holy grail of strategic dominance, China's full-blown nuclear triad. Buckle up, because things are about to get radioactive. Just when you thought the hypersonic missiles and laser cannons were the jaw-droppers, Xi decided to pull out the geopolitical equivalent of a mic drop, China's full nuclear triad. That's right, land, sea, and air, all synced up in a neat little package paraded down Tiananmen Square like it was Fashion Week for apocalypse tools. Let's start with the land game. Rolling out were the Dongfeng series, names that already make Washington twitch. The DF-5C and DF-41, intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of carrying multiple warheads, looked less like parade floats and more like moving doomsday machines. Each one could reach U.S. soil faster than a TikTok trend goes viral. Next up, the Sea Leg. Enter the Julong-3 submarine-launched ballistic missile. Basically, China's way of saying, even if you nuke us first, surprise, we can still strike back from under the ocean. That kind of second strike capability isn't just scary, it's the cornerstone of nuclear deterrence. And Beijing made sure the world knew it wasn't playing rookie ball anymore. And then, the airborne punch. China showcased its H-6N bombers, sleek and intimidating with the capacity to carry nuclear payloads. These aren't just planes, they're flying reminders that China's arsenal isn't stuck in Cold War museums. Add in the possibility of hypersonic glide vehicles, and suddenly the U.S. Air Force has a lot more sleepless nights ahead. The symbolism here was undeniable. By parading the triad in broad daylight, Xi wasn't just flexing hardware, he was planting a psychological flag that said, "We're not vulnerable anymore." For decades, the U.S. relied on its nuclear dominance to keep challengers in check. But seeing China's triad roll past cheering crowds, that's a neon sign flashing, "Game on." And let's be real, you don't show off your nuclear crown jewels at a parade unless you're sending a message. The message here? Respect us or regret it. And speaking of messages, Xi wasn't alone in sending them, because right there beside him were two guests who turned the parade into a full-blown geopolitical family reunion, Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. Yep, the new axis of defiance was seated front row, and their presence said more than any missile could. If parades are about showing off, then China's Victory Day wasn't just a flex of firepower, it was a red carpet event. And who got front row seats? None other than Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. Forget Hollywood cameos, this was the geopolitical Avengers Assemble, minus the spandex. Picture the scene. Xi in the center, chest out, soaking up the glory of missiles and marching soldiers. To his right, Putin strolls in like a man who's been sanctioned so many times he's practically collecting them like Pokemon cards. To his left, Kim Jong-un beams like it's a family barbecue and he finally brought the potato salad. The optics? Unmistakable. These three weren't just attending a parade, they were making a statement louder than the roar of the fighter jets overhead. The message was simple: we're together, and we don't care what the West thinks. It was a living postcard to Washington, Brussels, and New Delhi. The U.S. doesn't own the guest list to global power anymore. And having Putin and Kim flanking Xi made it crystal clear that China is comfortable being the anchor of an alternative club, one where democracy isn't the entry ticket. Now, this wasn't the first time Xi rubbed shoulders with fellow strongmen, but the timing couldn't have been juicier. With the West busy debating sanctions, military aid, and whether TikTok is spying on grandma, Xi orchestrated the perfect optics. A unified front of leaders who've been painted as villains in Western headlines, now strutting together in defiance. Think of it like a high school cafeteria moment. The popular kids, the West, sit at their table whispering about the troublemakers. Meanwhile, the so-called troublemakers, they just threw a lunch party with fireworks and everyone noticed. And while Western leaders skipped the event, Putin and Kim were waving, smiling, and shaking hands for the cameras. Symbolism doesn't get clearer than that. A new axis of defiance was on full display, and Xi was the ringleader. But here's the thing. This parade wasn't just about who showed up. It was also about rewriting the story itself. Xi wasn't only flexing weapons, he was flexing history. And that narrative twist is where things get really interesting. Let's be honest, most military parades are just about showing off shiny toys, making sure the soldiers march in perfect sync, and convincing the world your tanks don't break down on the way to the square. But Xi's Victory Day parade? This wasn't just hardware porn. It was narrative warfare, a masterclass in storytelling with missiles as the punctuation marks. Here's the clever part. Xi tied the event to the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. On the surface, that's a nod to history, but underneath, it's a calculated political move. By celebrating China's victory over Japanese aggression, Xi was reminding the world, and more importantly his own people, that the Communist Party isn't just a ruling government. It's the heroic defender of the nation. Think of it as CCP brand marketing with nuclear fireworks in the background. And let's not ignore the global optics. By positioning China as the true liberator in World War II history, Xi not only downplayed the role of Western allies, but also reframed the CCP as the cornerstone of global peace and justice. That's not just historical revisionism. It's the kind of rebranding that would make Madison Avenue jealous. Domestically, the message was clear. The party saved you then, and it'll protect you now. Internationally, the message was sharper. China has always been on the right side of history. Deal with it. This kind of narrative control is a weapon in itself. After all, wars aren't only fought with bombs and bullets. They're fought with stories, symbols, and who gets to claim the moral high ground. And the beauty of it? The West couldn't clap back without looking petty. What are they going to say? Actually, we did more in World War II than you? That's not exactly a headline you want to run in 2025. So while missiles and tanks grabbed the attention, it was Xi's weaving of history into the spectacle that gave this parade its deeper punch. And speaking of optics, there was one empty chair that said more than words. Because while Putin and Kim were soaking up the spotlight, India's Modi was nowhere to be seen. And that absence might have been the loudest signal of all. Now, here's where the parade drama gets juicy, not because of who was there, but because of who wasn't. While Putin and Kim were clapping like they just watched the season finale of Game of Thrones, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi was noticeably absent. No handshake with Xi, no polite smile for the cameras, not even a token delegate waving awkwardly from the back row, just silence. So why skip one of the biggest geopolitical spectacles of the year? On the surface, India's excuse was scheduling conflicts. But come on, this is international politics. We all know scheduling conflict is the diplomatic equivalent of, sorry, I'm washing my hair. The truth is, Modi's absence spoke volumes. Think about it. India's in a tricky spot. On one hand, it's part of BRICS and has trade ties with China that it can't just ignore. On the other, it's staring down border tensions in the Himalayas and a growing strategic bromance with Washington. By not showing up, Modi managed to thread a needle, avoiding looking submissive to Xi while also dodging the optics of outright confrontation. In other words, he played the role of the cautious chess player, moving one piece at a time. But let's not pretend this didn't sting in Beijing. For Xi, having Putin and Kim in attendance was a show of solidarity. Missing Modi, though, that was a hole in the lineup, especially since India's presence would have sent a powerful message of Asian unity. Instead, Modi's no-show was a subtle but pointed reminder: don't count India as part of your squad just yet. Analysts say this was less about snubbing and more about balance. India wants to be everywhere, but owned by no one. Multipolarity is the word of the day. Still, in the theater of global power, absences can be louder than appearances, and Modi's empty chair spoke louder than any speech she delivered. If Xi's parade was the blockbuster movie, then Donald Trump's reaction was the snarky review on Rotten Tomatoes. True to form, the former U.S. president didn't hold back. Why would he? The man treats social media like it's his personal coliseum. And this time, his gladiator opponent was Xi's glorious parade of power. Trump's take? Predictably theatrical. He called it a cheap stunt, a third-rate performance, and, my personal favorite, a desperate attempt to distract from China's collapsing economy. That's classic Trump. Throw in a jab, add a sprinkle of doom, and season it with America First bravado. But here's where it gets clever. By mocking the parade, Trump wasn't just dunking on Xi. He was also reminding his audience back home that he's the loudest voice against China. For his supporters, it's red meat. For Xi, it's background noise. And for the rest of the world, it's proof that Trump is still playing the role of China's loudest critic, even when he's not in office. Let's be real. Trump loves being the center of attention. Xi's parade threatened to hog the spotlight, and Trump wasn't about to let that happen without throwing some shade. Think of it like crashing a wedding toast. He wasn't invited, but he grabbed the mic anyway. Now, whether you agree with him or not, Trump's trolling wasn't entirely baseless. The timing of the parade did conveniently shift the global conversation away from China's economic woes, domestic crackdowns, and awkward questions about its role in global conflicts. But here's the kicker. Every time Trump tweets about China, Beijing rolls their eyes, but secretly, they love it, because nothing says we're important like getting a free shout-out from America's most polarizing figure. It's a twisted kind of symbiosis. Xi flexes his muscles, Trump mocks him, and both walk away with more attention than they had yesterday. Everyone wins, except maybe the global audience who just wanted a break from the political theater. If you strip away the fireworks, the marching bands, and the shiny war toys, what's left of China's Victory Day parade? A giant neon sign flashing, "We're here, we're strong, and we're not playing by your rules anymore." This wasn't just a show. It was a thesis statement about China's place in the world. Let's connect the dots. First, Xi showcased his military because nothing says global power like missiles that can hit your backyard in under 15 minutes. Second, he stacked the guest list with authoritarian besties like Putin and Kim, proving that China isn't isolated, it's building its own VIP club. Third, he weaponized history, turning the narrative of WWII into a political tool for today. Put it all together, and what do you get? A crystal clear blueprint. China is no longer content being the world's factory, it wants to be the world's referee. And here's the kicker. This strategy doesn't stop at America. India, Japan, Southeast Asia, they're all part of the chessboard. By framing itself as the rightful inheritor of victory and global leadership, China is staking a claim that stretches far beyond the Pacific. It's essentially saying, we've been patient, but now it's our turn at the table. Of course, that table is already crowded. The U.S. isn't giving up its seat anytime soon. India's pulling up its own chair, and Europe? Well, Europe's still arguing about the menu. But China's boldness in hosting this parade makes one thing clear. Multipolarity isn't a concept anymore. It's reality. and Beijing wants to be the one holding the gavel. Now, whether you see this as visionary leadership or dangerous chest thumping depends on which side of the fence you're sitting on. But one fact is undeniable. This parade was a power move with ripple effects that will shape alliances, trade, and maybe even conflicts for decades. And that, my friends, is why a single parade wasn't just about tanks and tunes. It was China's way of telling the world, get ready, because the global order is changing. And fast. So what did we learn? That a parade can be more than just synchronized marching and shiny missiles. It can be a megaphone blasting China's ambitions across the globe. She reminded the world that history isn't just written, it's rewritten. He showed that alliances aren't fixed, they're flexed. And he made it clear that the global stage isn't owned by America anymore. It's now open for auditions. The question is, will this bold performance inspire new partnerships, provoke dangerous rivalries, or simply become the meme factory of the year? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure, the ripple effects of this parade won't stop echoing anytime soon. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, hit that subscribe button for more sharp takes on global power plays. Drop a comment with your thoughts. Was she brilliant or reckless? And remember, in the game of geopolitics, the parades may end, but the drama never does.